Molly Bennett. Wow, good evening. So tonight I'm going to talk about the wonderful things that happen when you talk to strangers. But I'm going to begin with a little background about myself. I grew up in a family that didn't own a television, and so we always listened to the radio, like Prairie Home Companion, every Saturday night. This is actually a picture of me and my parents circa 1930. And so I really came to the conclusion from all this that radio is one of the best mediums for telling stories, and I wanted to try to do that myself. So 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to get some funding during January term to do a radio project, and I'd heard of this squatter community in Southern California about 10 hours south of my house in Sacramento, and I really wanted to go there and see what sort of things I could find. And so I filled out my applications and I got my hands on a digital recorder and a microphone, and my parents let me use the minivan, so I packed it full of canned foods and drove down south, and I didn't know anyone there, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to find. And I ended up, the place is called Slab City, and it's this strangely beautiful place where everyone lives off the grid in buses and trailers, and they're bartering and scavenging and also making strange art out of things they find in the desert. Like one man has been working for 20 years on a mountain made of adobe and paint, and you're going to see that very soon. That's it, Salvation Mountain, and it's huge and it's incredible. And so I could see that there were all kinds of interesting things going on here, but I wasn't really sure how to approach people and ask them and stick my microphone in their face and say, "Tell me a story." So I followed some signs from the main road to this mysterious place called the Oasis Club, and it was this cluster of trailers, and I got out of my minivan and I walked really cautiously up to this group of older men playing Scrabble under an awning, and I kind of was like walking really slowly, and I came up and I said, "Hi," and they said, "Sit down, sit down." And so I sat down with these gentlemen, and I introduced myself as Molly Bennett, a student from Colby College doing an anthropology project. And they introduced themselves as Builder Bill and One Can and Mike Bright. Mike Bright's that fellow in the middle there. And as talking to strangers go, these were some pretty strange strangers to me first. They called themselves hobo poets, and but for some reason I found it really easy to talk to them. And by the end of the day, I was sitting in front of Mike Bright's trailer and interviewing him as he told me as he cataloged every scar on his body. And I can't tell you all those stories now, but one of them involves falling into an in-ground swimming pool in the middle of the night on this scooter, which is also his beer cooler. So that's Mike Bright. And Mike Bright was also sort of considers himself the mayor of Slab City, and so he introduced me to a lot of people, and one of the most wonderful people I met was Robin, who's here in her yard, and she told me the story of how she started the Slab City prom. And she arrived in Slab City about 10 years ago, and she wasn't really expecting to find anything there but poverty. And she got involved in the music scene, which was starting up, and decided that, because she had never been to her high school prom, and a lot of people she knew hadn't been either, she thought that we should have a prom. And she collected donations of formal wear, and she said it was one of the most empowering experiences she ever had. And so I interviewed her about that. And I had this wonderful time just like speaking to people about their interests in their lives. And so last January, I decided I wanted to do something similar. So this time I decided to do a mobile project, taking a train from my house in California back to Maine. And I had never been on long-haul trains before, and I didn't really know what it would be like. And I'm a little bit shy, so I wasn't sure how I was going to meet people. So I came up with this plan. I made all these question sheets that said, like, who is your greatest hero, or what did you want to be when you grew up? What are you doing now? And then I made this sign that would entice people to come talk to me that I wore around my neck. And it said, "Tell me a story." And so this is what it would look like if I was approaching you on a train. Here I'm hesitating for a moment. And then I decided to say, "Oh, excuse me." And the thing is that I didn't really even need the sign, because it turns out that long-haul Amtrak trains are extremely social, and there's this car in the middle of the train called the observation car with these big glass windows, and people just hang out there all day and play games and read and talk, and you don't have to be traveling with anyone to hang out there and talk to people. And so it was this wonderful camaraderie of, I met all kinds of people, ranchers and cowboys going between their farms and other students going back to school. And at the station stops, everyone gets out and huddles on the platform and like moves around to get their legs going, because some people have been on the train for 5 days. And I met this one family going through Montana. They're these 5 middle-aged siblings, and they were going on their first vacation together for a really long time. And they were really excited to tell me lots of stories. And one of the things they were doing while they were all together was they were remembering their father, who had passed away recently. And they told me like all kinds of stories that he used to tell them. And this one story they told me was about how when their father was a little boy, he had fallen off a hayloft onto a pitchfork, which had gone through his chin. And I thought, my friend Max made an artist's rendering of that, and I thought that was a horrifying story, but because it had been told to them all the time in their childhood, they thought it was hilarious. And so they just laughed and laughed as they told me the story, and I ran around with my microphone trying to get all of their voices. And so I had this wonderful time on the train, and I met so many people, some of which I'm still in touch with. And I made some radio stories, and I hope to make more next year. And I think one of the things I learned is that, well, there's this sort of idea among my generation in particular that you should just avoid any awkward situation as much as possible. I found that by embracing like the most uncomfortable and awkward situations, I had the most wonderful time and learned so many things. So thank you all.